Hello. Welcome to the YBMB show. I'm Angela Middleton. I'm talking to you from West London. And as some of you may know that now, those of you who've started to tune in on a regular basis, we run this show 3 times a week live. We cover body, mind and business in that order. Body on Monday, mindset on Wednesday and business on Friday. And I am delighted today to welcome my good friend Catherine Greig onto our show to talk about business. Hi, Catherine.
Hi.
And also, we have got this, obviously, this great connection because we were sporting the same hair and earring look today, and it really wasn't planned, but that we're off to a good start. So Catherine's joined me. I really wanted to get her on because I wanted to talk about something in business which has become increasingly important, but in fact it's something that Catherine has always prioritized within her business. Catherine's business is called Make Good. It was founded in 2009. It's an architectural design business, and I will leave her to sort of talk to you a little bit more about the core values of it, and we'll go on to talk about the importance of sustainability in business. So hi, Catherine, again, and thanks so much for joining us. And tell me a little bit about, your business, just for the viewers, first of all. Tell us a little bit of background, and then we'll go on to talk about the core values.
Amazing. Thanks, Angela. Thank you for having me. It's very exciting to be here. I founded Make Good in 2009. I'm an architect by background. And I really wanted to set up a business that put people, all people, more at the heart of how decision making is made around our built environment. So one thing that I really noticed at architecture school is that the decisions were all made by people at the top who traditionally hold the power, so traditionally men, traditionally white people. And I really wanted to shake that up and to start making the decision making much more democratic. So we work on projects that are all in the public sector or public space and think about involving as many people as possible in the design process. And that happens in all different ways, but it's very much about, kind of getting people involved and doing some really fun activities with people so that they can see how their opinions have shaped what happens.
Yeah, because I was really so interested to see one of your more recent projects where it was to do with, I won't sort of give away the details, but I'll let you sort of describe as much as you want to about that. But you held a sort of quite a lot of public debates and things, didn't you, around the design of a particular spot in central London. And if you could sort of bring that to life for us a little bit, because I think it will really sort of, it'll be a great example of the work that you do.
Yeah, it's easier sometimes, isn't it, when there's an example. Yeah. We were doing a piece of work for Grosvenor, a big landowner, for Grosvenor Square. So it's a really important project for them. It's in Mayfair. It's probably like a London square that people may or may not have been in, but you could probably draw it even if you hadn't been there, and you would be pretty accurate about what it's like. So it's got some railings, some grass, some trees around the outside, some monuments, a fountain. And so the brief was to try and involve people in a conversation about improving that public space for people and for planet. So how could it be much more sustainable, but also how could it be much more inspiring and interesting for people to use? And so we took the approach of thinking, well, we could have some conversations where people might say more flowers or a couple more trees, but we could also bring in some experts who are from all different industries and do some talks and debates around it. So we had a whole series of what we called big topic talks. We did them all online because of the pandemic, but they were great, and that we had different speakers, not all from the same angle, not all saying the same things, but giving people an opportunity to really think about public spaces. Could be anything from like, how do we deal with water, because we have this whole more flooding and more drought at the moment because of climate change. So how do we deal with that? How do we deal with planting in a way that really is good for us as humans, but also kind of good for the planet? So looking at pollinators, through to kind of actually how can planting make us feel something? So how can it really have the best impact on our health and well-being? So it was a really great way of widening that conversation, and people got really into it, and people from all across London and across the UK could get involved and hear that. those conversations and add in their views. And it's definitely been a nice way of helping people think about their own spaces as well as this kind of central London space.
I mean, it was really fancy because I came in on one of those talks out of interest and sort of heard some of the debate, and people were so interested, so engaged with it, and it made, you know, such a difference to hear that type of debate when normally, not that I've got a huge amount of experience of construction projects, but normally, you know, the debate is all around sort of footprint and, you know, value per square foot and, you know, profitability. And I think if we could just touch on that for a moment with regard to business, some people could be led to believe that, you know, if you're looking at a business that sort of prioritizes sustainability, that you might be doing that instead of, or sort of swapping that out instead of profitability. But the two are not mutually exclusive, as you obviously are demonstrating, having run the business since 2009. But not just that, there are many other advantages besides sort of the you know, the impact on the planet, etc. Because now, you know, we're all so much more interested and aware, I think, of the planet that we live in and wanting to sort of do something to sustain it, aren't we? So there's more advantages as well to running your business. You want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think as consumers, we're so much more conscious, aren't we? And that is from on an individual level of the people that we're meeting on the street or talking to or engaging in our work and want to know things about our business. So where are we? And how do we share the profit within the team? Where do we source any of our materials from? How are the team involved in that business? And then from a client perspective, we work in public sector, so we have lots of things that we have to answer around where are we sourcing our materials? Where do we print things? What do we print on? What happens to the materials once we've finished working with them? When we build, what are we building from? All of those things, and kind of thinking about how are we employing people locally? Are we spending money locally? And it's interesting that these are questions that are quite easy for me to answer, because when I set the business up, it was all about involving local people in decision making, but also stretching that out across. We've always had a policy around spending money locally. So if we're doing a project in a particular area, we would try and spend money on, whether it's from catering an event through to kind of when something's being built, working with a local contractor or buying materials locally. So as much as of that spend gets spent locally in that area, offering kind of work experience and internships for people in an area, not just within our team, but if there are partners on the project, kind of spreading that out. So these are things that, you know, right at the beginning was something that I really, really was keen to do. And so it's interesting that it's gone through being something that people weren't so interested in. Now it's a core part of a decision making as to why a client will think about working with you and having answers to these questions that aren't just we recycle our paper or we have low energy light bulbs. It's got to be more interesting than that.
Well, I think that's you know, on that theme of, you know, is running a sustainable business, can it be profitable? I think that what's interesting, particularly in the public sector space, is that, you know, these priorities of yours that you've always had top of your agenda are now becoming mandatory for any organisation. So if someone's going along, a business is going along and bidding for a big contract, you know, a government contract, let's say, or a local authority contract, you know, they're asked all these questions about sustainability. And what we see now is many organisations running around sort of thinking, goodness, you know, how can we become more sustainable? Let me sort of put, you know, some new initiatives. Let me rebadge someone's title, head of sustainability or whatever it is. And that there you are, you've been doing it. So since you're one of the founders of this, really, you've been doing it since the beginning, since 2009, as we said. So that's a huge advantage really for you and for any other business that wants to follow in your footsteps. But also, I'm assuming that this is really helpful if you're hiring people as well, because you know, people now are interested in working for businesses that have values that align with theirs, aren't they? Have you experienced that at all?
Absolutely. I think it's something that definitely over the last 2 or 3 years as we're recruiting, it's something that makes a difference to people wanting to join us and, you know, pushing us further in some areas. So I'm thinking about, you know, we do have an environmental and sustainability policy, and we do look at how we're, doing some stuff internally with our processes, and very often it will be kind of some of the younger people in the business who are interested in taking on board how we can all make decisions and change things. So I'm thinking about, it could be, there's tiny examples of like, we have all our milk delivered in glass bottles now to the studio. So we're, it's all these, which sounds like a tiny thing. We a couple of years ago said we were no longer going to print for a client, because some of the stuff we do is exhibitions. So we're no longer going to print on something that is not sustainable or recyclable. And that means it's more expensive for a client, but it's also has a longer lead in time. So they have to make their decisions earlier. And we just said it to clients and they said, yeah, okay, we'll accept that. And with the team, that came from someone within the team saying, actually, I'm really fed up of us saying these things, and yet in this area we do this. So I think it's definitely something that people are interested in, and rightly. And I think making sure, like, whilst it's my values that might have started the business, making sure that everyone can contribute, because there's a whole kind of social sustainability piece as well as environmentally sustainable. And I think living your values within the business as well as outside of the business is something that's really important.
And so, as we said, you're attracting people to want to come and work for you because of these values that you have, and also you're pushing clients to follow suit because you're making proposals which maybe they're starting to come around to, but might have seemed quite alien at the beginning. And I know you had a couple of instances, didn't you, where originally when you were pitching that maybe clients were used to the more traditional sort of architectural design proposals, and then suddenly you're coming along with some of these quite different aspects of the proposal, and they weren't always taken that seriously at the beginning, were they?
No, I mean, I think I also set the business up. I mean, architecture is a very what should I say, old-fashioned profession in many ways, and I think it is moving, but there's a whole kind of central core of it which is very traditional, and I think it's also a very male-dominated industry. And definitely at the beginning there was a real sense of almost feeling like people were laughing at what I was trying to do, not being taken seriously. Lots of instances where I'd be speaking and people would point out something about my physical appearance, when you just think, you wouldn't do that to a man. Like, what is happening?
I remember you said that. Someone put his hand up and said something about your buttons or something. Your buttons on your jacket or something. Yeah, crazy.
You think someone's going to ask a question relating to what you're saying, so you say, yeah, of course you could ask a question, and then it's actually about your physical appearance. It's very strange. So I think those things, and that wasn't that long ago, like those things are still out there. But I think there's a shift now, definitely, where people know that they need to, whether or not it's authentic or not, I think people know that they need to be thinking about this stuff, or somehow have somebody within the team or someone within a pitch or a client needs to be able to address this. So often, there is a whole section often in kind of public sector bids that is about sustainability and equality impact, and all of those pieces are things that we can write about. And so I can see that we've gone from being the outliers to now being mainstream, which is equally as something that I think, well, we then have to shift as well, right? So you've got to continue doing more, kind of, you can't just sit in your place, you've got to kind of be thinking about what's the next thing, how can we do more.
Completely. Well, I mean, I was talking to somebody last week, I think it was, and we were talking about innovation and having your USP, and that's not sort of decided just once and that's the end of it, is it? Because you entered what would appear to be a flooded market, like you say, a traditional market, and then you come along but you carved out your niche very, very clearly. I think your branding was brilliant. I mean, just the name of your business, Make Good, is just fabulous, and really embodies what you do. But yeah, like, as we know, you've got to continue to consider what's unique about you, why clients should come to you, and if everybody is following suit, trying to constantly evolve so that you're just ahead of the pack there, or different at least, is critical. So what would be your have you got some tips for people who are thinking, do you know what, I love my business, but I can't make it sustainable from my point of view? I mean, how would they start, do you think, if they are in any type of industry? I mean, some are a bit more obvious than others. I suppose fashion, or if you're sourcing things, you would source from sustainable sources, but that's easier said than done, obviously, when people are looking at logistics and costs and things. But what would be your tips?
I would say, so something that has really worked for me is thinking about things that are important to me personally. So my own personal values, and thinking about therefore how that can translate into the business, and then widening that conversation. So some industries I can see that might be really tough for people to think about, well, what am I tangibly doing? But I think you can start with recruitment, and you can start with kind of what you do within your own office space, or even working remotely. We can think about, well, how much stuff are we ordering? How many deliveries are we doing? Who are we ordering from? What is the environmental kind of credentials of the companies that we are ordering from? Can we shop local? All of those things that you can actually make those decisions as a business without thinking about how you're producing, if you're producing a product or how you're delivering a service. And then I think kind of being open with the team, if you have a team, and saying, here's what we'd like to do, here's the things that I think are important to me, what things are important to you, what could we do, what are the easy things that we could do, what are the medium term kind of slightly harder things to do. And actually, if we thought kind of longer term, as I'm speaking, I'm like, this is really similar to how you might think about anything in a business, right? It's like, you've got to think, well, what are our goals? And if you keep setting yourself in 5 years time, I want it to be X, and you don't break that down into steps, you'll never achieve it. So you've got to kind of have, what's your audacious goal, but also what are the smaller things that we can do, that we can monitor, and we can see, are we achieving it? And so I sort of poo-pooed recycling earlier, but if you don't recycle, then you could recycle. What have you thought about everything that you got delivered to your office or to your homes or whatever, and thought about changing the way it gets delivered, or kind of writing back to people and saying, well, I don't want to buy from you anymore if you continue to package in that way? So we all have agency of things that we can do.
Yeah, it's amazing, actually, as you're saying, sort of I'm sure that sparked off a lot of thoughts with people in your not just in your sort of field, but in other fields as well, because you can do things. And I think the other thing is to talk about it and communicate about it as well, and then it becomes part of your your brand and your unique selling points as well. It's been so helpful. The other thing, bearing in mind that the program is called Your Body Means Business, and as you know, I sort of think that there is a very strong connection between physical and mental fitness and what we do in business and our careers. I know you think the same yourself as well, having been an incredibly busy mum of 2 very young children, and also you've got a little colleague, I think, with you sitting there right now, haven't you? You've still got a little colleague. Let's have a little look. Is he there? There she is. Look, being really good and really spoiled. Yeah, being on the bed. Bless her. So I know you're busy.
Often. This is a special treat to stop her from barking and
She's very well behaved, so that's good. But I know you're really super busy, but you've really maintained your fitness. I mean, you look amazing when I've seen you. So tell us what you think about the connection between, those two things.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have always been someone who likes to move a lot. So I actually have my best ideas when I'm moving or walking. Like, I am not a go to the gym or like run marathons person, but I do walk an awful lot, and I cycle. And it's a really good thinking spot for me. So making that time is so important, and I can really feel it when I don't do that. And I think when we met, Angela, I'd just been through a really, really stressful period, and I'd stopped doing that. I'd stopped moving. I'd stopped eating properly. I was, sustaining on sugar an awful lot. And this is before I had children, and I thought, this is completely ridiculous. Like, I cannot sustain this. I feel really sluggish. I can't think about the business. I was actually quite uninspired by the business, which feels implausible right now, but like, I definitely, it was really heavyweight. And I just woke up in 2014 and thought, I'm going to stop eating as much sugar. So I stopped eating sugar completely for probably about 6 months, and I started moving an awful lot. And so I walk probably like 6-7 kilometers a day.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a bucket, it's not loads and loads. Some people will think that's loads and some people will think that's nothing. But I do that all the time. And then I have introduced sugar back because I think it was too strict, it was too hard. But not all the time. Like I would have it, was really sustaining my mood and comforting myself and rewarding myself, everything through sugar. So stopping that emotional relationship with sugar made a really, really big impact. And I've just sustained it. And I think because, I mean, you probably know more about this than me, about the whole like length of time in which you embed a habit and then it becomes a habit, like it just becomes a ritual. Yes. So I think that 6 months of like total abstinence and then slowly introducing it back in, and now it doesn't have the same appeal. So even, I mean, interesting, I would say in the last 9 months, I have had moments where I've like not moved as much because I couldn't, or having small children, juggling work, all of those things, and you fall back. But if I fall back into the pattern for a couple of days, and then I will instantly feel
the
difference. And then you think, well, I can't.
You've experienced what it's like to feel amazing and in top form. I think one of the things that you mentioned to me when we did meet was that you can actually identify that when you started to feel sort of super fit again, that things started to take off in the business. You said there was a definite...
it really, it's I hadn't thought about it until we were talking about it, but they absolutely kind of correlated. So I think I was at a point where I thought, as I said, I was really like down about the business. I really didn't like it. I was really unhealthy. I was feeling really miserable. Had this change, but also at the same time thought, I'm going to pitch a piece of work every week. Which is, I mean, it depends what kind of business you have. That would be ridiculous for us to sustain that. But again, I did that probably for like 4 or 5 months, and really got better at pitching. Obviously we weren't winning every pitch that we put in, but got better at pitching, started to win work, a lot more work, kind of could hone, had energy for it, had enthusiasm for it. And then they are like, it's a virtuous circle, isn't it? So it just kind of boosted. And I think now we don't pitch that volume of work because we're too good at pitching, and then we would win it all, and then I would have a different challenge. But I think it was a real, sometimes, you know, I'm definitely a big believer in setting an audacious goal and breaking it down into manageable steps. But sometimes you need to do a sprint. Sometimes you just need to say, I'm going to shift something up, and I'm going to shift it up for this window of time. And we're just going to do it. And knowing it's not going to be forever. Like I couldn't pitch a piece of work for forever. I couldn't have no sugar for the rest of my life. I know that some people do, but like it became really challenging, like going and seeing friends and all of those things. So for me, and it was something that I could introduce back a little bit of.
I think it's such a great example though that you've given there, because you know, you decide, you set yourself this audacious goal, as you called it, pitching at least once a week. Now to do that, well, firstly, you knew that if you did that, then you were going to change your result. You were obviously going to get a bigger result, but not just that, you were going to improve your skills, because obviously we do more things more frequently and we get better at them. But you know, obviously you would have to have had the energy to do that, and so the whole thing is correlated. I saw exactly the same thing myself when I went through my own sort of transformation, is that everybody could see what had happened on the outside, as I did with you when we met, but what they can't actually see, but that what they can witness is what goes on in the inside as well. Because I always think of the body as a bit like a taxi, and if you put the right fuel, the right quality, the right quantity, you maintain it, you let it cool down at night and all of that, it's going to run really, really reliably and ferry around its passenger properly, i.e. the brain in our case. And the same thing applies to our body. And I think that's a lovely way to probably finish our talk. I'll come back to you in a second, but I just wanted to say to anybody who's listening here now, who really likes this type of philosophy and wants to hear more, we run these live conversations with people, you know, esteemed people such as Catherine. We run them 3 times a week, and we talk about aspects of body, mind, and business. And if you want to hear more about it, I run live webinars. I've got another one this Sunday at 4 o'clock. If you want to click on a link, there'll be a link that pops up here. And you'll also have the opportunity to work with us in the YBMB program as well if you want to jump in and start getting results for yourself. But thanks so much, Catherine, for that. And you are such a sort of a living, breathing example of how, firstly, putting your values first and foremost with your business, and secondly, looking after yourself physically enables you to have the energy to bring those values to life. That's what you're most definitely doing successfully with your business and with your family as well. So you're doing it all at the moment. Anything else that you wanted to add before we finish?
Only sleep and water.
Yes, well, those are critical as well. And if you're managing to do that with 2 little children and that little doggy, then anybody can. Again, it's what gets focused on gets done, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I have less sleep, obviously, because I have small kids, but then I think the other bits, you have to compensate, right? So you've got to eat better, and you've got to drink enough water, and you've got to rest when you can.
Yes.
Otherwise, you can't sprint in every area simultaneously without collapsing.
Yeah, no, that's right. All right, well, thank you so much. It's been so nice to talk to you again, and I'll see you very soon.
All right.
Have a lovely Christmas.
Thank you.